tracking calories and protein can absolutely work for fat loss. For some people, for some time, to some extent. But what if I told you there is a much easier, way more sustainable and zero obsessive way to lose fat, tone up, and to actually stay lean long term. In this video, I'll tell you exactly how you can gently shred down your body without tracking a single calorie or gram of protein. If you're new here, hi, I'm Hannah. I'm certified in nutrition and in fitness, and everything in this video, as always, is based on current research. So there are basically 3 things that you need to actually get lean. A calorie deficit to lose weight, enough protein so that that weight is actually fat and not muscle, and the right workouts so that you actually build that muscle and to make that deficit easier. And I'm gonna walk you through everything without you needing any food tracking app or activity tracker, because these things are not always so accurate. First, we'll talk about your metabolism and how it works and how you can get into a sustainable calorie deficit without actually tracking any calories. Then we'll talk about how you can hit your protein goal, again, without tracking a thing. And last but not least, we'll talk about how to design your movement routine in a way that first helps you tone up, and second, not mess with your hunger cues, because that being ravenous after working out is one of the main reasons why intuitive eating doesn't work for a lot of people. Let's get into it. Okay, so first let's talk about your metabolism, because even if we're not tracking, it's very helpful if you understand how your body actually burns energy and how you can influence that. So your metabolism, aka the calories your body burns every day, also known as your total daily energy expenditure, aka TDEE, basically consists of 4 parts, namely the BMR, the basal metabolic rate, which is the largest chunk of the calories your body burns every day, which is for most people around 70%. So this is the biggest chunk of the energy your body needs. Then we have the NEAT, which is the non-exercise activity, which includes things like fidgeting, talking with your hands, walking, standing, cooking, things like that. And that is the second biggest chunk. And that is also the chunk that most people underestimate by a lot, because this chunk can be up to 30% of the calories that your body burns every day, which is a lot. The third chunk is the thermic effect of food, which is the energy your body needs in order to process and digest the foods that you eat, which is usually about 10%. But this number depends on what you eat and how you eat. For example, protein has a higher thermic effect of food than fats, meaning the calories from protein are worth less than the calories from fat. So if, for example, you eat 100 calories worth of chicken breast compared to 100 calories worth of butter, the 100 calories from the chicken is only about 70 calories, while the 100 calories from the butter is more like 95, almost 100 calories, which is one of the main reasons why people keep telling you to eat enough protein, always, but especially if you want to lose fat. Same thing goes for fiber, by the way, because your body needs more energy to break down the fiber in your foods than if it's just very easily digestible food. Again, one of the main reasons you keep hearing eat enough protein and enough fiber when you want to lose weight. And this TEF is one of the biggest reasons, not the only one of the biggest one, why calorie tracking apps, most of them don't work, because most of them don't even account for the TEF, which can make up to around 200 calories a day, depending on your body size, or even more. But also the other numbers can vary a lot, person to person. Also, based on your genetics, because 2 people who eat the same, who look the same, who train the same, can still have a difference of up to 300, maybe 500 calories a day just because of their genetics. And that is one big, huge reason why tracking doesn't work for so many people. And the last and smallest chunk is exercise. So actual conscious exercise, which is usually only about 5% if you exercise. And most people largely overestimate this chunk of your TDEE. Now, these are the 4 levers you need to pull if you want to get into a deficit. But once you know how to pull them, you don't need to check anything, because you will just basically do it automatically. But we'll talk about that later. Okay, so your TDEE as the calories your body burns every day. This TDEE needs to be more than the calories that you're actually putting into your body in order to be in a calorie deficit. That is math. So calorie math is true math. It's just a very complex math. So if you don't want to do that math, how can you intuitively make sure that you are in a deficit? So first, if you want to lose fat sustainably, aka not be one of the 90% of people who gain all the weight back at some point, you should really do a small deficit, meaning absolutely maximum 500 calories, even better 200 to 300 calories, or even less than that. Yes, fat loss is gonna take a bit longer with that, but it's gonna stay, and you want it to stay, I suppose. If you're an average woman and usually need 2000 calories a day, average, that would mean a deficit of about 10 to 15% of your daily calories. How can you hit that deficit intuitively? Well, mainly by stopping to eat when you're 75 to 80% full. Why? Because your satiety signals usually take a little while to actually arrive to your brain, which is why you should always, even if you don't want to lose weight, stop before you're 100% full, because usually after 20 to 30 minutes, when your satiety signals arrived up here, you would be 100% full. So try to aim for 75 to 80% full. Now, you've probably maybe heard about that 80% full thing before. It's also called hara hachibu. It's one of the main principles that the Japanese people apply when they eat. But it's kind of likely that you sometimes struggle with knowing what 80% even means, and then even if you feel it, to actually stop eating. Now, I do have to add a little disclaimer here. If you do have a history of disordered eating, this stopping to eat when you're 75 to 80% full can be a bit harder for you than for the average person. Even for the average person, it can be hard at first because you need to get back in touch with your hunger and fullness cues. But it's just something that you need to practice, and you just might have to be a little bit more patient than the average person. But you can absolutely do it. So now we'll talk about how to make this easier for you. First, and easiest thing first, sleep. If you don't sleep enough and well enough, your hunger and satiety signals are just messed up. Because if you're not rested enough, sleep deprivation raises your ghrelin, your hunger hormone, and reduces your leptin, one of your main fullness signals. So if you're not rested well enough, you're just a lot hungrier. And also usually craving more calorie-dense foods like very fatty and sugary foods. And that's because your body is trying to get the energy that it didn't get from sleeping from food, because both gives you energy. Just the one thing also gives you calories. So make sure to get enough sleep and high quality sleep, aka take care of your sleep hygiene. Next to sleep, what is also very, 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 very important to actually be able to trust your hunger and fullness signals is stress management. And this is a bit trickier. Sleep is a lot more straightforward, but stress is not always something we can influence. I mean, sleep neither, but stress is even harder for several reasons. Now, cortisol, your main stress hormone, tends to increase appetite, and especially appetite for, again, very calorie-dense foods. Same mechanism here, by the way, as in sleep, because also sleep deprivation raises your cortisol. But next to the stress eating, there's also emotional eating, which can be even harder sometimes to distinguish from the eating that you're doing just because you're hungry or just because you're craving a certain type of food. But most important thing is obviously to try to stress less, which is not always easy. I get that. But in the moment, before or around eating, there's also a lot of things you can do to reduce the effects of stress and emotions, negative emotions influencing your eating behavior. And that includes, for example, taking a teeny tiny break before actually eating and taking 3 deep breaths, which already helps calm down your nervous system, and that makes it a lot easier to chill out. And also to not eat distracted, which is one of the main reasons why you keep hearing this. Because when you're distracted, especially by something stressful or just, short form content that is frying your brain, that can also lead you to kind of be stressed because you're always in the, do mood and not in the actually, resting and eating mode. So try to do less, even better nothing while you eat, and take a few deep breaths before you start eating. And what also helps with this, but in general, with actually feeling your fullness signals, is to eat slowly. First, when you eat slowly, you're a lot less stressed because, if you eat like this, I don't know about you, but I'm stressed out if I try to eat fast. But not only that, also, when you eat fast, your body has less time to actually send your fullness signals to your brain. So it's a lot more likely that you eat over the 80% and sometimes often also over the 100% full. So you've heard this 1,000 times, I bet, but it is very, very important to eat slowly. What does slowly even mean? At least 10 10 times of chewing. Depending on what you're eating, obviously a banana needs less chewing than a steak, but even better, around 30 chews. You don't need to count your chews. It's more about the, idea that you actually are not stressed and actually are chewing your food. Also, because that helps your gut to actually digest the food later. Depending on what you eat, obviously try to aim for at least 20 to 30 minutes of eating time. I know this can sound a lot, but it works magic. Trust me. Now, next to sleep, stress, and your eating speed, a fourth thing that really matters when it comes to your hunger and fullness signals is your blood sugar. Because when your blood sugar spikes, so your glucose levels go up, the thing that happens after that spike is that they drop very quickly. The spike usually happens after you eat something, for example, sugary or very carb rich, because then the sugar in your blood goes up. But then right after that, you know, your body is trying to level that out. So it goes back down and it crashes. And that crash makes you tired and ravenous. That is the time, often at, for example, 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., when you're craving something sweet or you feel like you cannot make it through the afternoon. And you can counteract that by making sure your blood sugar stays more or less stable. There are a couple of hacks that you can do to make sure your blood sugar stays stable, but the most important one is to coat your carbs, meaning don't eat carbs on their own, especially white/simple carbs. So toast with jam, a glass of juice, these things are gonna most likely spike your blood sugar, and then right after you're gonna crash. So whenever you have carbs, pair it with protein, fats, and or fiber to make sure that your blood sugar effect is moderate and it doesn't go like this, but more like a nice little wave. And last but not least, I have to mention it here, focus on whole foods, not all of the time, but most of the time, because whole foods, aka real foods, non-ultra processed foods, are real foods. So your brain actually recognizes them as real foods. If you eat chips and protein powder, yes, that's also an ultra processed food, all the time, that's harder for your brain to recognize as, oof, I've actually eaten food. Which brings me to the next part, what to actually eat / how to hit your macro goal, okay, protein goal, without tracking. Why do macros even matter? Protein is essential for your body to be able to build and maintain muscle. Otherwise, especially if you're in your deficit, your body will not only lose fat, but even more so muscle, and that's not what you want to lose if you want to be lean. And next to that, protein also helps you to stay full for longer, which again is helpful if you want to be in a deficit. However, you do not only need protein, especially if you're eating intuitively, I mean always, especially then, because fats are also very important for many things, but also to stay full after eating. And carbs is also something your body needs, especially if you work out, but always don't let these people tell you should not eat carbs. You do need carbs too. It's more about the quality of the carbs. Carbs are very essential too. And if you cut them too low, especially if you're working out, but even if you're not, that can also mess with your hunger and fullness signals, because at some point your body craves carbs. And if you include all 3 of the macros in your meals, that is the easiest way to actually be able to trust your hunger and fullness signals. So your protein goal should be 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilo of your body weight. And this is a range. You do not have to hit 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight every day. That range gives you a range of about 30 grams of protein, meaning you do not need to track every single gram. It's not that important. Protein is important, yes, but it's not about 5 grams or 10 grams more or less. Or also, if you eat 50 grams one day, you're not going to lose all your muscle mass. So chill. So if you're a 60 kilo person, for example, that would mean that you should aim for about 90 to 120 grams of protein. Now, how do you know how much protein is in your food if you don't track? I have a cheat sheet of protein and fat guesstimations so that you can actually eyeball your protein and your fat portions. But you can also make this even easier and just use the plate method, which says that you should fill half your plate with vegetables, which provide fiber, a quarter or palm-sized protein source, chicken, tofu, whatever, and then 1/4 or palm size of carbs, preferably complex carbs, like sweet potato or brown rice, for example. And then about a thumb size of fat, for example, olive oil. So diet is at least 70% of the equation, but the other 30% is how you work out and how you move your body. So let's talk about that too. First, non-negotiable if you want to get lean is strength training. It does not matter too much what kind of strength training. What matters most is that it's really hard and that you make it harder every time, which is also known as progressive overload. Try to aim for 2 to 4 times a week, depending on how you structure your week. For example, 2 to 3 full body workouts, or if you do 4 times a week, do a, for example, upper and lower body split. That can be at the gym, but it doesn't have to be. I have a whole video here about how to get lean to build muscle at home if you don't have access to a gym. And in the video description below, I'll link another video where I walk you through how you can actually build your workout routine, whether that's at home or at the gym or with whatever sports you like to do. Now, next to strength training, which is crucial to build and maintain muscle, there is also that other huge chunk that helps you with your calorie deficit, which is the NEAT, the non-activity movement that you do every day. And this is such a huge lever, which is one of the reasons why you keep hearing people telling you to walk 10,000 steps a day, because this increases your NEAT by a lot. Depending on your body size and fitness level and how fast you walk, you can burn about 300 to 500 calories a day, which is more than the deficit that you need, as I mentioned earlier. Now, if you're someone who generally struggles to get her little booty off the chair and to walk more, I want to introduce you to someone who might help you with that, namely today's sponsor, WalkFit. WalkFit is a walking app designed specifically for women who want to lose fat and build a consistent movement habit without it feeling like a workout. You start with a short quiz that takes maybe 2 minutes, and it builds you a completely personalized walking plan based on your goals, your fitness level, and your lifestyle. So whether you prefer walking outside on a treadmill or you literally never leave your apartment, it has a plan for you. And what I also like about this is that it tracks your step, your progress, and your consistency, because as you know, consistency is king, and it keeps you motivated with challenges and streaks, because sometimes you just need something to make it less like a chore and more like something like a game that you want to win, because gamification makes to-dos feel a lot less like to-dos and more like fun. So if you want a little helper to get your daily steps in, you can download WalkFit through the link in my description. So try to get your 10,000 steps in if you can, or on top of that, try to move more. Get up from your desk a couple of times, do 5 air squats, clean your apartment, that also burns calories, stand when you can, things like that. Just be a bit more active, because one of the best things of the NEAT compared to other forms of exercise is that it tends to not make you hungrier. Unlike, for example, cardio, especially, even more than strength training, which is one reason why people often tell you, or you sometimes hear, that cardio is not necessarily the best thing to do if you want to lose weight, at least if you're new to it, especially if that cardio is high intensity, because that high intensity raises your cortisol. And remember from earlier, when your cortisol rises, that can make you hungrier, which is one reason why people, if they start or do a lot of high intensity exercise, they often struggle with staying in a deficit, or not just feel ravenous after working out. That said, if you like cardio, especially if it's zone 2, just jogging, do it, or dancing, or whatever you enjoy. Do whatever you enjoy. Just keep in mind that, especially if it's high intensity, that might increase your hunger signals a bit above the actual calorie needs that you have. Now, all of this can sound like a little bit, and I do want to mention that this takes a little bit of practice, especially if you're new to trusting your food intuition, or like I said, if you in the past your relationship to food was a bit unstable, and or if you've been tracking for a while. But it just takes practice. It might take you a little longer, but it is really worth it. If, however, you find out that this does not work and you just want to track, go ahead. If it works for you, it works for you. Now, if this still feels a bit overwhelming, I built a full guide that walks you through how to actually sustainably and gently is the same thing in this case, lose fat and tone up. That gives you all the tools and the systems that you need to actually get started and to keep going. And whatever you do, remember to be gentle to your body. It will reward you for that. I promise that. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to check out this video right here where I will walk you through exactly how to build the workout routine that works for you. And I'll see you over there. Take care.